Hi everyone, it's Jen. So today I'm going to be doing a things I wish I knew before going to law school video. It's not going to be too long, don't worry. I made a little list of things I wish I knew before I studied law. The first one is maybe just a personal thing. It's maybe something that I just hadn't considered and everyone else had. My number one tip would have to be that you have to be politically aware to study law. When I first started out at law school, I didn't know a single thing about politics. It wasn't really something I was interested in. It wasn't something I knew anything about, so how could I be interested in it? And a lot of the things that we were talking about in law, or even just in tutorials and general discussion, were so over my head. I didn't have a clue really the relevance of any of it. You know, starting out on things like public law, I hated it because I didn't understand how everything was connected and what impact it had on us. Now that I'm very politically aware, public law is my favourite topic by far, because I understand the implications, I understand how everything links together, and I just didn't have that understanding before. And I know it sounds so basic, but if you just are aware of things that are going on in the world, having general conversations with your fellow classmates and tutors and, you know, talking about current events will all make a lot more sense. For example, in my Public Law 3 class last year, we studied Brexit as one of our topics. If I wasn't politically aware and didn't know anything about current events in Brexit, I would have been so confused and would have hated it. But in reality I liked it because it was easy. It was stuff I already knew about, so there wasn't really much to learn, you know, so it ended up going from being something really difficult to something really enjoyable, just because I was having a nice understanding of what was going on around me. Law and politics are very, very similar. I mean, if you look at most politicians, they've studied law, so you can see that it's very relevant. So if you're someone that really thinks that they're not interested in politics or doesn't really know a lot about it, I'm not saying you need to be an expert by any means, but just kind of having an understanding of things that are going on and how things really link together. My second tip is to not get caught up in the law bubble. The law bubble is what I like to call the hustle and bustle of people in your class. If you go to law school, you're going to be in a class with people who are very, very driven, people who are going for the straight A's, they're going for the magic circle traineeship, and they're hitting it hard, and you will feel inferior to them a lot of the time. You know, there'll be people in first and second year that are getting internships and you're not getting internships, and you're thinking, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not them? You know, there'll be people, I hate to say it, but with connections that will get themselves great opportunities that you might not have. But that's completely fine. There's always going to be people that are succeeding straight from the get-go. You don't need to compare yourself to everyone. Law is very competitive, as you probably know if you've applied to it. There's going to be people that are like hitting the ground running, they know what they want and they're setting out to get it, which is great, but don't panic. If you turn up to a tutorial and there's someone sitting next to you with 10 pages of well-crafted notes and you don't feel like you can debate with them or join in the discussion, just put that thought to the back of your mind. You're never going to get to the place that they're in if you don't feel confident enough to work. It's a very diverse subject, you know, the modules are very, very different, and you're not going to love everything and you're not going to be great at everything. So just accept that from day one. You know, do not compare yourself to everyone in your class because it is such a diverse subject. It's ridiculous. Which kind of leads me on to point 3, which is self-motivation. You really cannot let yourself get swept in with everything and kind of lose sight of what you need to be doing. I personally find law very interesting, and it can be hard sometimes not to get carried away with that and think, oh my goodness, I'm learning so much, I'm so intelligent now, I know X, Y and Z about contracts, let me tell all my friends, without actually then reminding yourself that you have a shit ton of work to do and you cannot get too caught up in things. So self-motivation really comes into play here. You really can't get to the week before exams and then kind of do a little bit of reading as revision, look over a couple extra sources and that's you done. It doesn't work like that. Law is very much a subject where it's the little details that will see you through. It is nothing to do with having an understanding of general principles. That's very much general knowledge. It's relatively easy and very interesting to understand law and be interested in it, but to get good grades you need to know the ins and outs of certain topics. You need to know your case law, your references, your different schools of thought. That's where you'll actually succeed and be able to, you know, debate something and understand it well enough. What I liked to do in the past is to write down every sort of chapter I've read of a book, any sort of source that I've read, mark it in my book, and also write it down in a little diary that I had. I just called it like my reading diary. That way I could actually look at what I've done and, you know, how much I'd actually done in that week. So if I ever felt a little bit, you know, disconnected or something like that, I could see how much I'd actually gotten done and, you know, just felt a little bit better. Then when it comes to exam time, there's usually only a couple of chapters that I haven't read, or if anything it's just going over everything for a second time, which makes life a whole lot easier. My next tip would definitely be to do reading in advance. I'm so keen on this, it's unreal. If I go to a lecture, I'm probably going to sit there and think, I don't understand what's going on, I'm not really going to take much of this in. If I go to a tutorial and it's something I consider a new topic, for example, if the tutorial is before the lecture, I'm not going to understand anything and I'm not really going to take in all the extra points. However, if you have already read the relevant chapters in the book, you're going to have that basic understanding. Then when you go to the lecture or the tutorial, you're going to know all the basic things. You're A, going to feel so confident because you're like, I know all of this. And then B, people who bring in additional points or like relevant material, that's just going to add on top of your basic understanding. If you don't have that basic understanding, you're not going to absorb the additional details, and that's what really sets you apart. That's what you will use in an exam. That's what you will use in your assignment. That's what will get you good grades. It's not having the basic understanding. So if anything you take away from this video, it is do reading first. Get your basic understanding out of the way at the beginning of the week, at the weekend, before your next round of classes. Then go through the week taking all this additional info, all these additional facts, and by the end of the week you're going to have basic understanding, ton of information that is super useful, and altogether that's just really going to help you so much. Also, if you are not aware of this yet, then crash to reality, law books are really expensive. So I'm just going to show you two of mine I have sitting here. These were probably like £30–40 each. I can't really remember. This one was £38.99. I've had this for quite a while, to be fair. For most of my classes I've had 2 or 3 books and then like 1 or 2 statute books on top of that. For most classes you'll have required 1 textbook and then maybe like a recommended book. I often find I buy the recommended books. I know that seems really keen, but often they might bring something else to the table, or I feel like my book is missing something and I want to pick it up, you know, like go big or go home. So if you're spending all that money on textbooks, you're going to want to use them. This book here I literally read through like twice, like I'm not even joking. It was so useful, so £40 yeah, but worth it. This is what's called a statute book. This is for commercial law. So this basically has all of the acts in it that you will need. So you can take this into an exam, you can highlight it and you can like put little tabs on it, but you can't write anything in it. Do not be the person that thinks they do not need a statute book. I was that person in first year. I only had 1 or 2. Most of them are pretty outdated. I came to the exam and I did not know how to use it. It was useless. It just sat on my desk for the 2 hours and it was pointless. So now what I really recommend is that you use your statute book from the beginning. I know it might not make a lot of sense to you to begin with, it's just pages of act, but even just putting a couple tabs in, a couple highlights, is so useful. Then by the time the exam comes around, you already know where everything is in it. So if a topic comes up in the exam, you know that there's a relevant part here, a relevant part here, you know where to find all of that. So yeah, it's super useful to know your way around a statute book. I found that made such a difference in my exam results this year. Yeah, so trust me on that one. Use your statute book wisely. Be the person that has a highlighted statute book and knows how to use it. Another tip that I have for you is to be realistic with your notes. Lectures are very, very fast paced. There's a lot of information to get through and there is no point writing down this is lot, like there's just no point. Your notes should literally be things you don't know from your textbooks. It should be other bits of information, other pieces of understanding that you can rely on. I personally have stopped handwriting my notes just because I felt like I didn't have enough time to get through all the material. I found it a lot more useful to just type and expand on the lecture slides themselves so that I wasn't wasting time like writing out what was already on the screen and I could get on my computer anyway. But when I do handwrite my notes, because I am a big fan of handwriting notes, this is how I would set it out. So I'd always have my notes on one side of the page and then leave a blank space on the other side. And the reason I did that is then when it came to revision, I would go through this and by the end of the semester there was maybe a lot of it that I knew off by heart anyway from tutorials and assignments. So I would then just use like a little sticky note to put the things I didn't know by that point, like this, so that then when I was revising I could just focus on almost like the condensed version on this page. I personally like to revise by writing things out. I love to do mind maps and things like that, but by no means spend your time writing at basic understanding. You can use your time more wisely to read other sources and get other bits of information. You really need to pick your time wisely. It's something that I have found very difficult to come out of, the cycle of just writing out pretty notes, but since moving to a computer and just focusing on understanding things and like considering concepts in my head and reading extra material rather than writing things out, it has actually worked very well for me. Of course it might not work well for you, but it's just something to consider, that it is a subject that you really need a lot of time, so your time might not be best spent writing out notes all the time. My last tip that I will give you if you're someone that is interested in going to law school is to know what you're interested in. When it comes to picking modules, it's going to be the hot topic of conversation. There's obviously going to be the more popular modules that maybe all of your friends are doing, or that are considered to be better modules. For example, commercial law. But if it's not something you're interested in, there's no point doing it. Don't force something because you think it's going to make you more money. A lot of people seem to force themselves into loving commercial law. I actually really liked commercial law. I did relatively well in it, which is great. I didn't think I would like it to begin with, but in my year a lot of people really struggled with it, and I feel like it was a bit of a hot topic because people wanted to be interested in commercial law. They wanted to do well in it because it's seen as the thing that will make you most money. But don't force something if you're not going to enjoy it. You might as well pick a module that you'll do well in and then have good grades and get a job that you want. So all in all, law school is great. It's super interesting. It's super fun. You will have a great time. You know, there's lots of extracurricular things you can do, like law society and mooting. So really get in there, get involved in things, and get a really good understanding of law, because it's not really a subject that there bears much point in drifting through. It's something with a lot of depth and a lot of variety, so you might as well get interested in a lot of different things and you will do very well. So yeah, thanks for watching this video. See you soon!